Welcome back to College Football Addiction. I've got Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 with us today. Going to talk a little bit about West Virginia and some massive moves that they're making. Appreciate BetUS for their support. Drake, let's get into this. West Virginia not messing around under Rich Rodriguez with these hires.
No, I mean, SEC, take that. He said, give me that. I want that. And that is Zack, the co-defensive coordinator at OU. The very first takeaway I have on this move is, TJ, Oklahoma has a whole lot of problems, and the SEC is not as put together as they want you to think. One Oklahoma fan posted on Reddit, please, for the love of God, explain to me why taking a DC job at West Virginia is better than having one at OU. And that's the question a lot of people are going to ask from this. How do you go from the SEC as a DC to the Big 12 in West Virginia? Now, Zack has worked in the past under Rich Rodriguez, and we know that Rich Rod is going to be a powerhouse head coach in the Big 12 because of his past at Jacksonville State. Prior to that, West Virginia. He's been around the gamut in college football, and to go to West Virginia, be back home where he was from. The guy grew up in West Virginia and now pull a DC from the SEC. It is huge. And this Reddit post goes on with, what the hell is going on in Norman, Oklahoma? They just lost to Navy, too. We have seen over the course of these last 2 weeks, pillar after pillar fall, domino after domino fall in the storyline that the SEC is the best conference in college football. And another one of those dominoes is a defense coordinator going from that best conference in college football to the Big 12 to work under Rich Rodriguez at West Virginia. What's better, Norman or Morgantown, Oklahoma or West Virginia? For Zack, it's going to be West Virginia. And I know this has a lot of SEC fans, Oklahoma fans, including this cat on Twitter or Reddit as well, not very happy.
Yeah, it is certainly interesting. And how much of a factor do you think the very rocky start that Oklahoma has gotten off to there in this SEC, and not just though what they've done in the SEC, really this tenure under Brent Venables, even going back to his Big 12 days, how much of this do you think is going back to a familiar place, and how much is, let me get out of here before the writing on the wall becomes reality?
Yeah, this is not Scott Frost level yet, but it reminds me a little bit of, okay, native son comes home and he's supposed to be the head coach that is the prodigal son who wins a national championship and takes your team to glory, and that's just not it. Like, Bob Stoops was great at Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley, as much as they hate it, was great at Oklahoma. Brent Venables has not been great at Oklahoma, and a bigger problem for them is Texas is so good right now. It pains me as a Big 12 guy to say it, but the team that won just one Big 12 championship the last 14 years won the SEC regular season title this year, and Oklahoma can't seem to find its footing under Brent Venables in the Big 12 or now the SEC. This does not look very good for that regime, and I don't know if Oklahoma can afford for the next 2-3 years to hold on to Brent Venables, because next year's schedule is even more brutal than last year. And for Zack, he coached under Rich Rodriguez at Jacksonville State, at Louisiana Monroe, goes to Oklahoma, and it takes just a year for him to say, I don't want any part of this. I'm just going to go be a defensive coordinator where I feel like I can thrive. And it's a weird era, TJ, to me, a weird era in 2025 where you can thrive more at a school like West Virginia than Oklahoma in the SEC. That is not a surprise for Big 12 insider like me, not a surprise for West Virginia fans who know the culture of football there, but a big surprise for those who look at an SEC program or a Big 12 program, one that was middling the last 5 years in the Big 12, and say, shoot, if guys are making a decision like that, it can't be good. It cannot be good for Brent Venables.
Yeah, I just had this conversation, and we'll go back to West Virginia in just a second. Just had this conversation with somebody else. This, to me, at Oklahoma right now, it does not feel like just an SEC problem. It's very easy to blame that, but they barely beat Houston this year. They were in a dogfight with Tulane much before they got into their SEC schedule and had to play Rocky Top. This feels like a bigger problem than just Oklahoma wasn't ready for the SEC. I guess time will tell there. But,
here's a great, I want to reaffirm what you just said. Let's reaffirm that, okay?
I'll get right back to chatting with Drake, but first, make sure that you are betting with BetUS this rest of the playoffs, the NFL playoffs, the NBA, the NHL, whatever you're looking to bet on, you can do it at BetUS. Make sure you're using our code YouTube150 for a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit. Your next two are at 125%. All of that up to $2,000. BetUS will get you taken care of. It's, again, YouTube150. We appreciate them for their support.
So the press release that talks about Zack Alley going to West Virginia says that the Sooners last year, number 3 in defensive touchdowns in the country, number 5 in fumbles recovered, number 10 in team tackles for loss, 11 in first down defense. It keeps going. 19 in total defense in the country, 23rd against the rush, 25th sacks, and 30 scoring defense. Those are all great. And I was told, TJ, defense wins championships. So the guy's a great DC at Oklahoma. Their defense is good. The team's not very good overall. He leaves to West Virginia. If defense wins championships and your numbers are that and you can't win, what does that say about a program?
Yeah, it's trouble time in Norman. I feel like heading into next year, his seat might be hotter than anyone's in the SEC.
Yeah.
An SEC that includes Billy Napier, Sam Pittman, Kalen DeBoer, Brian Kelly. People are very upset with Mark Stoops. So, all right, back to West Virginia for a second. Their defense, their offense at times looked pretty good this year. Their defense could not stop a leaky faucet. They were terrible defensively. How big of a move is this for them?
Well, if you're West Virginia, we just hired the SEC defensive coordinator, right? So, again, from the perspective of an SEC fan and Oklahoma fan, you're wondering how, why, who let this happen? From a standpoint of a West Virginia fan or a Big 12 insider or Rich Rod, this is optically awesome, and you're getting a defensive coordinator who has all of those stats, figures, headlines that I just mentioned. So for Zack Alley to be at West Virginia, it shows Rich Rodriguez is walking in day one and is going to build a defensive-minded football team. How did he win when he was there in the mid-2000s? He won through defense. Now, obviously, he had some great offensive weapons, but his defenses were able to put such a hold on the Big East, the old Big East, that they went and were winning BCS bowl games. So day one, you put a defense together in the Big 12, you're going to be competitive. And not to say the Big 12 doesn't have a lot of good defenses, because they do. They're developing in that direction. But for West Virginia to put an emphasis like this on their D shows Rich Rodriguez is very serious about winning day one. Zack Alley's a big part of that. Go with the splash, a big name, somebody who can get things done in Morgantown. And the guy who's going to do that is an SEC defensive coordinator. So if you're West Virginia, and I can wax poetic about what Rich Rodriguez has done and will do from the last month to the month coming up, they're in such a spot that I believe they can compete in year one, no doubt.
I didn't even have this on the notes, but just kind of ran across my mind. And I'm not trying to hire another coach when Rich Rod has been on the job for less than a month. Yeah. Could this be a head coach in waiting type of situation?
Somebody is going to need that title in the next few years. We've watched a couple of Big 12 programs, Utah namely, do this, where you understand, okay, and I thought Oklahoma State might have been that, where you think, okay, a big-time assistant will be the head coach in a few years, understanding that the head coach is a little bit older. And for Rich Rodriguez at now from Jacksonville State into West Virginia, he can't coach forever. I don't think he has 10 years left in him. He's 61 years old, but he's also a Granttown, West Virginia guy. This is like a retirement job, but still a big-time job for him. He's got 5, 6, 7 years, if he continues to win, to be at the helm of the Mountaineers. And then from his standpoint, he can choose when to hang it up. For me, tough to say yet, because, right, he hasn't coached a game in this second tenure at West Virginia, but Zack Alley would be the dude. I think he's 31 years old right now, so he's young enough that if you said, look, would you come and be the guy at West Virginia for the rest of your life, please? The answer is likely yes. And Rich Rodriguez is only making $3.5 million per year at West Virginia on this current contract. So we know that there's a lot there for the assistant coaches. And eventually, if Zack Alley is the guy, I think he makes a lot more than 3.5 and becomes now a Power 4 head coach or a Power 4 head coach in waiting if he sticks out for 5, 6 years, or if Rich Rodriguez is there for 5 or 6 years and says, hey, I want to clearly make it. I want to make it clear, I should say, that Zack Alley is going to be our guy. It's on the table.
Yeah, I'm not trying to upset West Virginia fans getting rid of Rich Rod just yet. But you can't tell me that if in 7 years, Zack Alley has been there the entire time, you've obviously had success, you've obviously got a guy that's in the culture, there's just a lot of pros to it. It worked at FSU and Jimbo Fisher. It can work.
Part of this, though, for Zack Alley, he wants to be good enough in the next 3 years that year 3, he's getting calls from UCF saying, come be our head coach, or a USF saying, come be our head coach. Somebody around that side of the country, I think he was a Clemson guy, somebody around this area of the country who says, we want you to be our head coach. So if things truly do go well in Morgantown, I think Rich Rod has enough time that Zack Alley could be a Power 5, want to bring the AAC in there, a Power 5 head coach in the next few years, not even making it to the end of Rich Rodriguez's tenure.
Yeah, absolutely. Drake, I'm excited for what comes from West Virginia. A lot of good content over your way as well. Where can people follow you and find your work?
Yeah, at LO Big 12 or at Drake C. Toll on Twitter and wherever you find your podcast with Locked On Big 12.
Thanks, buddy.
Always.
I appreciate you so much for watching this video on college football addiction. If you haven't already, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button. If you loved it, hated it, had questions, had concerns, had complaints, or just thought we were spot on tonight, hit that button for me. We are inching closer to 20,000 subscribers, and we would love if you helped us get there. Appreciate, again, BetUS for their support. Appreciate Drake C. Toll for coming on and chatting with us today. We will talk to you soon here on College Football Addiction.